Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Lewicki. Just as the diplomatic efforts to end the Russian aggression against Ukraine seemed to be making progress, Moscow seemingly decided to throw a spanner in the works. An uncorroborated claim of a drone attack against one of Putin's many lavish residences is gaining traction in some circles, with Russia already promising to harden their stance in the course of further talks. Is Moscow clutching at straws here, or has this been its plan all along if it ran out of options? Joining us here today is Rostyslav Khotin, senior editor at the Ukrainian service of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, Jonasz.
Right, let's talk about this alleged attack. Is there any evidence that it even happened?
No, there is no evidence at all. Russia claimed that Ukrainians apparently struck Putin's residence in the Valdai area of Novgorod region of Russian Federation with dozens and dozens of drones, just after the talks in Florida between Ukrainian and American delegations. But there is no evidence. Nothing has been produced as the evidence on the Russian side. Ukrainians strongly denied this at all. And the foreign ministry and President Zelensky strongly denied this and say that Russia is simply raising the stakes and wants to hit Ukrainian so-called, as Russian side puts it, the decision-making centers probably of Ukrainian government in Kiev to kind of justify these potential strikes against government buildings in Ukraine, in Kiev, the capital Kiev, with this ungrounded claims that Ukraine wanted to strike Putin residence. Just want to remind you that in September, Russia already hit the government building in Kiev, the building of cabinet of ministers in Kiev, with powerful missile strike. We didn't see any repeats of this kind of strikes, but nevertheless, Russia is also wants to portray Ukraine as an unreliable negotiating partner in the eyes of Americans. Russia wants to convince Americans that Ukraine is unreliable, that Ukraine is behaving irresponsibly, and hence this claim of kind of Ukrainian strike against Putin's residence.
Now, is it likely to have a lasting effect when it comes to trying to influence the Americans and, the public opinion? Because Donald Trump said he didn't like the news, but also he said, well, we're going to find out if it happened. Is it really possible to, conceal such an attack from any sources? I mean, there were no reports from local residents that there has been an attack of this magnitude. There seems to be, no other evidence of that either. Would you say that the Americans would have picked it up, like, some sort of intelligence chatter in Russia that one of the residences is under attack there?
The damage, political, diplomatic damage, has been done already. President Trump expressed concern about this kind of strike, so-called strike of Ukraine against Putin's residence. That's one thing. But indeed, there was no evidence of such a strike. Usually, when Ukrainian side strikes targets on the Russian territory, usually locals produce videos on Telegram channels and other social media. Usually there are kind of evidence of wreckage from drones and so on, etc. But now there was no video footage produced in social media in Russia, in Novgorod region. There was no wreckage produced by Russian side that indeed Ukrainian drones, fell or were intercepted near Valdai residence of Russian president. There was nothing at all. So apparently it's a fake news to influence American side, to influence, especially when Ukrainians and Americans are making progress during talks, and Russia wants to disrupt this, and Russia wants to destroy this peace process because Putin doesn't want peace now.
So do you think they might have essentially planned this all along, knowing the negotiations will not go their way? They're trying to derail them now.
Absolutely. Derailing such negotiations, especially when Ukrainians are ready to make compromise, are ready to make concession during talks, when they are kind of negotiating with all honesty with Americans, and Americans use this and praise the Ukrainian side. Russia wants to derail this peace process because Putin doesn't want peace now, especially on terms which are kind of acceptable for Ukrainian and American sides. Putin wants peace on his terms and only his terms, and currently at this stage of the war, Putin doesn't want peace so far at all.
So now these peace talks have been reasonably well received across the world, despite the fact that, of course, they're still putting Ukraine in a difficult position, which could have been avoided, perhaps, had Ukraine received more military aid before that. But we have a fairly positive reception of the initial signals. Let's take a look at what Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk had to say in the wake of these talks.
When I say that peace is on the horizon, I am talking about the coming weeks, not the coming months or years. We will all have to come together in January, and this requires the full solidarity of the institutions and the Poles in general to make decisions together about the future of Ukraine, the future of this part of the world, and that is why I am here absolutely open and ready for full cooperation.
So this is all provided that Russia does not derail this, and we've already indicated that it might be trying to do so now. But President Zelensky also said Russia may want to derail the referendum. Do you think that this is what the Kremlin is planning to do?
The thing is that Ukraine might hold the referendum or might not hold the referendum in the future, because two remaining issues out of 20 points of a peace plan are the most difficult. One is territorial, about Donbass, what the future of Donbass, whether Ukrainians are to leave the Donetsk region completely, or there will be some kind of free trade zone or demilitarized zone. That's one thing. Donbass is one thing. Another thing is the fate of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. That's 2 points out of 20 which are not agreed yet. If there will be a progress, there might be successful conclusion of peace process. We'll see. But so far, Russia is very unhappy that Ukrainians are negotiating with all honesty with American side, and Americans are praising Ukrainian side for these peace talks. We'll see whether peace is weeks away or months away. We don't know, but there is a progress. And Putin has to accept the peace deal, 20-point peace plan as well, because a lot of Russian initiatives were included by American side into this rewritten, redone, but nevertheless joint peace plan, which is supported also not just Ukrainian and American side, but also by the Europeans. Another thing which was almost finalized in Florida was American security guarantees for Ukraine, which will be Article 5 guarantees, NATO Article 5 guarantees for Ukraine. And we will see. As Polish Prime Minister Tusk said, that there might be even American troops on the ground, boots on the ground in Ukraine, that American soldiers might join this international peacekeeping or peace mission, international contingent which will be deployed in Ukraine. If Americans indeed are to join this contingent, it will be a completely different picture. It will strengthen, it will put additional strength to this peacekeeping force, to this international peacekeeping contingent in Ukraine, because Americans are Americans. And secondly, one thing also which is not agreed in terms of security guarantees, Zelensky wants American security guarantees for at least 30, 40, even 50 years. But Americans apparently are ready to provide security guarantees now for 15 years only. We'll see how it goes, but there are still sticking points which needs to be agreed by security advisors, and then there will be summit in Paris with the leaders of other European countries, coalition of willing at the beginning of January. So the pace of diplomatic effort, the pace of negotiation process is quite active, quite dynamic, and that is good.
Isn't this all about the monitoring, though, and how robust it's going to be? I mean, during the initial discussions, there was a mention of a provision that if Ukraine attacked first, the guarantees would be void. Now, doesn't this seem like an invitation to a Russian false flag operation, sending some of the troops across the border in secret, disguising them in Ukrainian uniforms, and then attacking some Russian settlements, pretending that it's a Ukrainian attack, whereas it's a Russian false flag kind of scheme? I mean, it does seem like this could be a problem at some point, right?
You know, we already had false flag operations and the kind of hybrid kind of type of warfare by Russia. We've seen occupation of Crimea in 2014, this so-called the little green man suddenly appearing on the Crimean Peninsula, you know, with no insignia, no kind of signs that they belong to the Russian armed forces, but they indeed belong to the Russian armed forces. Then we saw a conflict in the Donbass, which had a type of regional conflict in the Donbass area when Russia set up so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics and supported them financially and militarily them. But there were also kind of Russian troops, regular troops there, kind of conducting hybrid warfare against Ukrainian army in the Donbass. Then in 2022, of course, we saw full-fledged Russian military aggression, unprovoked military aggression against Ukraine. But before, for a long time, there was a kind of false flag operations. Now there might be kind of the peace. Russia will not stay calm and quiet. There might be some kind of provocation, so there is a need for proper monitoring of the ceasefire. And apparently, Americans are ready to provide satellite intelligence, other means of intelligence. Europeans will be there. There might be troops deployed, Western troops in Ukraine, not in the war zone between Russian and Ukrainian troops, but nevertheless, in some parts of the country, there will be monitoring of Ukrainian airspace and also the Black Sea naval export routes. We also will be monitoring. Turkey is ready to join their monitoring effort. So there is a need for proper monitoring, not to give Russia a pretext to continue provocations and hostilities.
So again, Western countries will need to learn from the experience of Ukrainians and Eastern Europeans concerning how Russia operates and how often it doesn't really act in good faith, as we've mentioned. Rostyslav Khotin was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you, Jonas.
And I'm Nasz Rywnicki. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.